last week on Sold. I have a question for you. Are you being relevant with your customers? See, if you're not relevant, your customers are not going to listen to you, you're not going to close sales, and you can't possibly hope of taking care of your existing customers. And if you're going to continue to do the same things that you did last year or the year before and hope they're going to work, you're in for a very, very rude awakening. That was last week on Sold. This week starts now. Number 3, customer says, I want a fresh approach. In addition to not being boring, if you want to have relevance, you've got to create an approach that's fresh. Now, I'm hoping that you don't approach customers with your product only. I'm hoping your traditional approach deals with some sort of benefit or some sort of solution to a problem they may have. You're going to have to take it, though, beyond that. People have more than just problems now. They have catastrophes. They have huge dilemmas that they can't even get their head around. So if you want to be relevant in this crisis with your market, with your customers, how you approach them has got to be radically different. Now you might be thinking, well, okay, John, how do we do that? I'll tell you how I do it. I call a customer and I talk to them for a few minutes and ask them how things are doing. And they'll usually tell me, well, it's pretty rough. I'll say, well, I understand that. In fact, I think it's really bad. It really sucks. And I'll get them to talk about how bad it is for a minute or two. And then I'll tell them this. Say, look, I may not be able to help you, but a cup of coffee, a few minutes, I have some ideas that might be able to make the bad not so bad, and maybe even make the bad good. By telling them and agreeing with them how bad it is, they feel that, okay, he's not trying to use some sales garbage on me. He's being real. And you know what? So far, every time I use that approach, everybody meets with me. Number 4, customer says, I want a relevant process. I've only got a small comment on this, but this really could be huge for you. If you think about how sales is developed in companies and how we train salespeople, it's very process-oriented. And I strongly believe that it's important that salespeople understand their sales process. Here's the problem, though. Since the economic crisis, everything in your customer's process has changed. So if you're following step by step by step the way that you used to sell now, you know what's going to happen? You're not going to be aligned with the customer's new process. Take a look at how your customers are changing their buying habits, change your process, and you might very well realize that you're going to be able to shorten your sales cycle and be more relevant to your customers' real needs and their real situation. Number 5, customer says, I want relevant tools. Today we live in a PowerPoint world, and we live in a technology world, and we live in a world where our sales presentations can be absolutely fabulous, and they can be dynamic, and they can also be too gosh darn long and too gosh darn unfocused. In this economic crisis, there are 2 things that your customer wants. Number 1, they want to know how they can get more, and number 2, they want to know how they can pay less. If you want to be relevant to your customers, think about your sales tools, your presentations, your sales aids, and all those tactics, and ask yourself this question. Are they focusing on how the customer can understand that they can get more and they can save more? How they can enjoy a greater benefit and pay less for it? Because anything you're using that doesn't address those 2 issues in today's world is not only a waste of time, but it also shows to the customer that you're not relevant. Number 6, customer says, I want relevant responses. You know all the negotiation tactics that you learned last year? And you remember all those one-line responses to objections that you were taught at that last training? Or how about all those closing techniques like the Ben Franklin close, or the right angle close, or the triplicate of choice close? Remember all those? Well, take them up, throw them out the window. They're not going to work in this economic crisis. What you're going to have to do if you want to be effective is change the way you respond during negotiations, during customers' questions, and when they object. Specifically, I'm going to spend time over the next couple of months giving you new tricks and new techniques that I've learned and I hear from other salespeople and other organizations. and also trying to help you adjust some of these responses that you've got in the habit of using. I know they're not going to work in this crisis. However, if you will change them, you'll become much more relevant, and your customer will feel that you're different from everybody else, and ultimately you're going to have a whole lot more influence. In summary, just remember, what worked last year is not going to work this year. And if you want to be relevant and ultimately have that influence and that power with your customer, you're going to have to think about literally changing every part of what you've been doing. Now you might think, well, gosh, that seems like such an overwhelming task, John. Well, it's not going to be easy. But at the same time, it's not impossible. And if you'll watch the upcoming episodes of Sold, and you'll really focus in to listening to your customers and watching the market, I have total confidence that you can make those changes, and not only make the changes, but add more relevance to what you're doing, and ultimately close a lot more sales more often.